And I said, Victor, what is it? Like, what do you do? You're always so happy no matter what, even all the crises you've been through. And he looks at me and says, honey, it's really simple. Just don't be cunty.
Nut Up or Shut Up, brought to you by Lady Balls Nation, a series that features men who have been influenced by fierce and gifted women. Lady Balls Nation, thank you so much for joining us today for the very first Nut Up or Shut Up show. This is something I've been pondering for quite a while and decided June, the month of Father's Day, would be the perfect time to roll it out. What is it exactly? It's an opportunity for us to hear from and celebrate men who fully support women owning their power. I am so very thrilled to introduce you to our very first guest in this series, Scott Schwenk. He's had a huge influence over my path in the last couple of years and has been instrumental in leading me to create a consistent meditation practice, which has been life-changing. Guys, seriously, I know you hear me talk about this all the time, but I highly recommend it. If you're not doing it already, your reminder, meditate. Okay, more about Scott. A hybrid of laser-like visionary insight and actionable practicality, Scott has been catalyzing the growth, development, awakening, and output of leaders, relationships, and organizations for over 25 years. From deep dive training with MIT's Sloan School, landmark education, and several years of immersive study in a monastery, to on-the-ground work with worldwide creative agencies, Scott's bandwidth continues to radically refine and grow. In both his private sector coaching and leadership development with business, the scope of his work is precisely focused in alignment, resonance, and flow, living, working, and playing in the highly innovative flow states, what all-star team athletes recognize as playing in the zone. He leads meditation at Unplug in Los Angeles, also at Wanderlust Hollywood, and one-on-one with private clients. He also offers evolutionary coaching and leadership development, helping people wake up, grow up, clean up, and show up. Woohoo! Okay, well, that's a lot. So welcome, Scott. I'm so excited to have you join us today.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm really, really stoked to be here. I've been thinking about this for days.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to get going in this. Okay, so we will get going. Speaking of somebody shutting up, I will, so you can talk. But, okay, so we're going to be discussing the importance of balancing masculine and feminine energies, specifically in the midst of the rise of the divine feminine. But first, I'd love to hear more about your story, how you got on the path to where you are today. Did little Scott always know he wanted to be a leader whisperer?
In some ways, yeah. And I think it started out, slightly tongue-in-cheek as just not wanting to be told what to do. When I was little, I was famous for saying, "You're not the boss of me," looking up at people much taller. And I'm a Capricorn, so I like to kind of forge my own path, even though I like to be supported. So it did start there. And from a very early age, my parents were already taking me to the YMCA, and I got very, very deeply involved at a young age in their leadership program called the Leaders Corps, and becoming a counselor in training for the camps and things like that. So it did start really young. And also as a little boy, I didn't know what it was, but I was clairaudient. I could hear when people were saying one thing but thinking another.
Interesting.
And that really caused me to seek and try and figure out what was up with life, that there was something that was going on that people weren't talking about that was present. And I had to find out what.
Wow. That's the thing. That is so fascinating.
Yeah, and not easy to grow up with either.
Yeah.
Because, as a little boy, I'm supposed to be doing what I'm told and by the caretakers. And I found myself, with different babysitters or after school sitters, I would act out to get kicked out when I found them consistently thinking one thing and saying another.
So how did you explore that? Like, how did you discover what was up with that? And
it wasn't until about 14 years ago, May 19th, when I had my first breathwork session with a mentor and friend named David Elliott, who I ended up apprenticing to for like 9 years. In that very first session, he looked at me and says, "You're clairaudient, don't you?" And I said, "What's that?" I knew about other forms of intuition, clairvoyance and clairsentience. I'd never heard of clairaudience. I didn't know what it was. And he said, that voice you hear in your head. And it tripped me out because I'm like, well, how the heck does he know that? And I realized he was deeply clairaudient too. So mostly, aside from him telling me that, it's been just paying attention to it closer and closer and closer, and learning how to tell what's what, who's who, what am I thinking or feeling for myself, and what am I thinking or feeling for other people. And what of it is, each of us has a piece of this pie.
Right.
I'm still learning.
Right.
I'm still working it out, especially the empathy piece. Like so many people that come to my classes, super, super empathic, could feel other people's body sensations and emotions as my own. So that was its own learning curve.
Right. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so learning to handle these sensations also was a big piece of my drive to just feel better. Because I could walk into a big public space in a great mood and suddenly feel crappy and not know why.
Right. Right. Interesting. So is that what led you to all the time in the monastery? Like that got you started with diving
that
deeper
was
into
further down the road,
right.
and related to our podcast and really supporting women to thrive.
Right.
And be awake. My mom basically single-handedly raised me after 11 while trying to build her own career from the ground up. She didn't finish her bachelor's at the time that she was raising me, and she worked her way from being a secretary and administrative assistant at Bausch & Lomb in Rochester, New York, all the way up to starting a wholly owned subsidiary for First Federal Savings and Loan and being a vice president there.
Wow.
Of corporate training, and went on to become, a very, very gifted executive coach and corporate trainer for other companies. She's now retired. So my learning about leadership was through a woman, through my mother.
Right.
And she's who handed me my first books on spirituality, really. Richard Bach, who wrote one of my all-time favorite books called Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah, and one of Shirley MacLaine's books, actually, Dancing in the Light. And in that book, Shirley mentions going to a woman by the name of Chris Griscom in Galisteo, New Mexico, for these really intense acupuncture sessions that she would find herself having memories that seemed like they were alternate or other lifetimes that she had lived, and coming out of these sessions free of baggage, more and more with each one. So I hunted down Chris's books, and that's really how my path began, is going zigzag from one book that mentioned somebody to another book to a teacher, and started taking classes. And meanwhile, deep diving in the United Methodist Church, where I was part of the youth group, and 2 years in a row gave the sermon to the entire packed cathedral on Youth Sunday. So there was always many points going on in my development. It's kind of mind-blowing how it all came around me, because I certainly didn't construct it all. Right.
That's a lot. And so really you were not following your mother's path, but she's who inspired you spiritually, and it sounds like to get into your executive coaching career.
Yeah, for sure. And she was always handing me books. When I moved, I lived with my father up until the 7th grade. And when I moved from South Carolina, where I was with him for a year, up to New York again to be with my mom, one of the first things she did, knowing I was going into a new school, was hand me a copy of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. So she was always giving me these books, whatever she was reading, for business, and encouraged me. So as early as middle school, I was reading these things and learning how to love myself more and how to get along in a world where I felt so other.
Right.
And I felt really other most of my life. And part of that feeling of otherness, I ended up unwittingly creating a boundary or a shield or something between me and other people to try and feel safe. It wasn't conscious. It was a way to not have to try and feel everybody else's stuff.
Right.
But what ended up happening is it kept me feeling separate and distant and not enough to belong.
Mm-hmm. So
So that was that was the other piece of what really drove me to get more help from mom or other teachers and books is like, all right, I want to be part of this world. I want to have connection. I'm a relational creature, but I also want to have the space to be who and what I am, whatever that might be, and to fully blossom.
So how did you break through that? I mean, I know it's not an easy answer.
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
And frankly, having people come around at different points, at key points, who are willing to speak the truth to me and say, hey, it's clear you've got some gifts, but it's also clear that you can be obnoxious, or you can be really arrogant, or you can just be really shut down and nasty. And, I know your heart is good, but these things about you just are taking away from that goodness. So here, try this out, or here, read this little chapter, or hey, let's sit down and talk about like what's behind that and see if we can get you some more freedom.
And what role would you say meditation played in that?
Huge. In the last year, I've actually found myself in my quiet moments going back in time and having memories of like sitting and watching the Christmas tree by myself in the dark, and how much love I felt for those moments, how much joy I felt in those moments, just sitting there quietly watching the lights on the Christmas tree. So many moments like this that I'm finding in my memories where it was some form of spontaneous meditation that I would seek out. And I wasn't consciously looking for it. I just needed it and would find ways and places to get quiet. And predominantly in nature, like there were trees I would sit in outside one of the houses I lived in. And just naturally find myself feeling expanded and actually start to lose the boundary of me and the world in those moments. There was just this pulsation, this feeling of a pulsation of presence. I wouldn't have said that then. I would have just thought I was quiet.
Right. And then this is making me think, I was getting totally calm, by the way, when you were talking about the Christmas tree. Like, I remember doing that myself. It's just such a beautiful memory.
Yeah.
So, and then what dawned on me is how often did we indulge in those moments as children, younger versions of ourselves, but how in today's, well, not necessarily today's world, but just, as we grow up and it's too busy. Like, we might have an inclination to indulge in something like that, but don't. So are you saying you're encouraging people, like, just stop, smell the Christmas tree?
Take a break. Yeah. Stop and sit and enjoy the Christmas tree or anything.
Yeah.
As my path continues to open up, it's really, really clear as a tantrika, anything can be a doorway into an expanded awareness and into a more upgraded feeling.
Right. And I think, and ultimately, would you say that's going to help people? I mean, this is more practical side of it, but to be even more productive, because I think our tendency, I know mine is sometimes when I feel those moments is like, oh, I'm being lazy, or I'm slacking, or, instead of just like, I like to think of it as slowing down to speed up, right? So.
Yeah. And a lot of the doingness that we do and that I have done in my life wasn't skillful. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that we were doing things to try and fix a feeling that we didn't like, or try to get a feeling that we didn't think we had inside of us.
Right.
So a lot of our doing is just the ego going in circles and never really finding happiness.
Right.
So the stopping isn't even always easy for some people. Sometimes in the stopping, as you've noticed in meditation, I've noticed in meditation, sometimes in the stopping, the thoughts surge in the quieting down and relaxing the body at first. We start to actually notice how much noise we've been walking around with when we just sit still and focus on our breath.
Right.
So there's a learning curve, and there's a I don't know, threshold guardians is what comes to mind. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey and all these stages of the hero's journey. And threshold guardians, these kind of experiences or energies or people that are at the gate to where we want to go. And you got to get through the threshold guardians before you can get to what's next, the next unfolding. Well, my experience is they all live inside of me and each person through thoughts and feelings that we either believe and back down from our seeking and awakening and growing up, or we don't believe them and we plunge through and burn through the fog of those illusory ideas about ourselves and the world. And that takes incredible amounts of courage, consistency, focus, mental focus.
Right.
And these are a lot of what the practices are aimed at developing. Most of the world, it's probably 70% of the world, probably believes that if I just go to a meditation class, if I can get myself to just go there, I'll be enlightened.
Right.
Or if I just get the right mantra, or if I just sit in front of the right teacher. And frankly, my experience is none of those things work without presence within me. Mm-hmm. And all those practices, all of them, are designed at just like cleaning the dirt off the window of our vision.
Right.
They're not the end goal. I didn't get into this game to chew my dinner mindfully for the rest of my life.
Right.
That's bone-grindingly boring for me.
Yeah.
I got into this game for freedom. I remember there's a friend of mine, a yoga teacher, and he said one time in class, yoga, freedom in yoga is to be able to move in any direction effortlessly from within any pose. That's freedom in yoga. Mm. And I apply that not just to physical movement, but to my whole life. Like, how free am I to pivot in the moment when I think somebody's done me wrong?
Right.
Or in the moment when I read something in my news feed that seems really inflammatory to my group of people or my city or my country. Can I pivot? Can I upgrade my perspective to something actually useful to me in the world?
And that's so incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking back when the meditation intensive that you did at Wanderlust recently, it was so fantastic. And I actually had an experience right after that where, came out, blissful state, checked my emails, like some not so cool stuff there, but I actually put that into practice. Like I didn't just trigger, respond. And so yeah, that is huge.
It's a big deal for us to discover. You're welcome. And thank you for taking it on. It's a big deal for us to discover and really get. And for me, it's not a one-time getting. I get it again and again and again every day.
Yeah.
I walk around in an animal body that is designed in such a way to keep itself in existence through certain sensations. But it doesn't mean that those sensations are going to give me an accurate view of what's the truth about all of life. They're about the here and now. I heard it once said by a doctor, South African doctor. He said, it's kind of a technical phrase, but bear with me. Emotions are an epiphenomenon of being in an animal body. They're meant to adjust behavior in the moment and be moved on from. But because we're language-bearing creatures, we have a body sensation, then we tell ourselves a story about it, and usually one that's unpleasant and keeps the sensation around a long time and informs how we respond or react ever after until we let it go. So meditation is also not just a place to get quiet and unplug and see what's up. It's also, as it develops, if all goes well, the natural evolution of meditation is there's this building of, you could call it presence or energy, or in my world, yogic fire, that burns up the seeds of that old conditioning. It's like filling in the grooves on a vinyl record so that you can start back at neutral.
Right.
If we had a machine that could just smooth out the grooves and you could burn a new record. that's what we're doing with all these practices is what is it to come back to neutral? And then what is it to live from that freedom? Without any rules, really. Because all the rules are completely made up anyway.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, I feel like we could dive down this rabbit hole for a while longer, but I want to dive into our main topic too. This is so much fascinating stuff. Okay, so let's talk, before we get into balancing the masculine and feminine energies, let's talk a little bit more about the divine female energy, Shakti. Could you, I know this is probably going to be like a Reader's Digest version. This could be an entire series in itself, but what is it and why do we want to awaken it?
Okay. What is it? That's a big question.
I know.
So first I'm going to say I'm not the expert. I will forever be a student, forever learning about this. And it's not enough to just get information, like go on Wikipedia. That's just a beginning place. The direct experience is the thing. There was a really famous linguist named Alfred Korzybski, and he was the one that said the map is not the territory, meaning that the words we use to describe the divine feminine aren't themselves the divine feminine. So it has to be experienced directly. So in the tradition that I come from, which is Tantra, which is not about advanced getting off, although if you do go deep with Tantrika, you probably will get off better. However, it's not about that. It's about awareness of awareness. Awareness of awareness. And in the tradition, the way we talk about it is there's Shiva and Shakti. And in English, we talk about it like it's the masculine and the feminine. That's just a convenient way to talk about it. They're never separate. They're one. They're not two. They're one. So we talk about them as individually, Shiva and Shakti, to be able to see and experience and understand more and live from it. But they're not actually separate. There's just one thing. And so Shiva, you could say, is the ground of being, like the empty fullness before the Big Bang. And then Shakti is the emergence of the Big Bang into form, the creation within what is, this empty fullness within what is, that forms start to get created. Planets, galaxies, star systems, atoms become grouped with molecules and become cells, which become organisms for a temporary period of time, and then they dissolve back into what? That same primordial empty fullness, that cosmic something or other. And whatever that is present. That empty fullness is present in every part of this universe, in all of its fullness. That means it's in every cell of your body, my body. Accessible. And alchemists and tantrikas have a way to actually become conscious of, through direct experience, this force and be able to create from it, live from it, which is very efficient, very much sustainable, and really, frankly, not about simply solely satisfying, a personal ego. I'm going to pause right there and see if you want to ask me anything about that or deepen it further in the direction of the divine feminine.
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is deepening it further in the divine feminine direction, but when you just said force, like, I know this is going to be a little like movie geek and maybe not so tantric, but like, is it the force like in Star Wars? Would you say?
I would. For me,
would you say that's
that
Shakti?
resonates as true.
Okay.
And I like that whole dynamic because it takes the false religiosity out of spirituality.
Right.
The dogmatic stuff, just the force. And when I did some ceremonial plant medicine work, the tradition that I sat with calls it la fuerza, the force. So it is the current. It is that, and That's what we touch ideally when meditation is going well. Many times, usually in one sit, that current. And that current is the Shakti. That current is the divine Shakti, or you could call it the divine feminine. I think that we get tripped up in our political understanding of masculine and feminine when we unconsciously bring that experience over to spirituality and talk about masculine and feminine. It's just not the same.
Right.
Shiva is the witness part of us. There's a part of you and I right now, and the listeners, that's just observing our own thoughts. It's observing our thoughts. It's observing our body sensations. And it itself never changes. It's just this silent awareness. That's Shiva. That's the masculine principle in part. The pulse in my veins, the heart beating, the neurons firing, the breath coming in and all out. This is Shakti. This is Shakti. And Shakti is what makes a mantra be powerful and awake. Without Shakti in a mantra, it's just a word. Mm-hmm. The Shakti is this dynamic force that leads us progressively into recognizing that we and Shiva and Shakti are not separate or different. We've temporarily believed ourselves to be these separate individual people with a past, a present, and a future. And yet the truth of the matter is we're the energy or the electricity that enlivens the story, the body, and the world. And that is infinite in all directions and can be directly experienced. And meditation, when it's skillful, brings us deeper and deeper into that experience. So you could say that our meditation practice is training to become aware of this divine feminine, this Shakti, and live from it rather than from the ego's seeming unfinished business or victimology or old wound structure.
And it's what connects us all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and we don't have to try to be connected anymore. Once we really get the teaching, we don't have to try to be connected. What we get to do is relax. Mm. And the more we relax, the more the connection becomes obvious that's already here. So many of us try and make relationships happen. Mm-hmm. Get people to like us. I don't need to create new karma. I'm interested in completing the karma I've got, unfinished business I've got, and enjoying what's right here, right now. And I'll tell you that in the last year especially, the more I let go into that flow of Shakti, loosely said, life is bringing me better stuff than my ego ever could have put on a vision board or an intention list.
I love that.
But I had to release this idea, this kind of not enough thing that we're all born into, unless you're born enlightened. We're all born into this sense. In Tantra, we call it like a husk or a covering. The Sanskrit is mala, anava mala. It's this root sense of just being not enough, insufficient, broken, flawed. It's a sense. It's not the truth. And when that clears, that begins to clear, this feeling of being already connected to everything, already connected to love, starts to surge.
But it's more about letting go than picking up.
That's right. It's not about attaining anything. Because if you could go get it, you could lose it, right?
Right.
So, well, what's here when I let go of all the false ideas and old pain that's not now happening? Mm-hmm. Here when I let go of thoughts? What's here when I let go of attaching to body sensations? What's here when I let go of holding on to the story of my past as though that's who I am? What's here when all that is just temporarily let go of? Thinking, emotion, and story. What's still here? this just simple presence that has kind of a feeling like a vibration or a pulse to it. And frankly, I find that same pulse in the wind, definitely when I go down to the beach and watch or swim in the ocean. There's this wave form, this wave motion that seems to be moving through everything when it's not blocked.
Mm-hmm.
And noticing it and resting attention on it seems to bring this kind of contentment and blissfulness into the foreground.
We can all use more of that.
Good idea. It's better than a sharp stick in the eye.
Yeah. Oh, God, yes. Okay, so we have I know you said you're not the expert, I would argue, because I feel like that was a very clear vision of what Shakti is, Shakti 101. So let's transition a little bit to masculine and feminine energies. Like we've discussed the rise, or touched on the rise of the divine feminine. I'd love to get your take on that, because so often it feels like the way it's presented is as if one is at the expense of the other, or it's an either or thing. I feel like, I could be wrong here, but I feel like all of us, men and women, need a balance of both to be...
Well, the truth is we have both.
Right.
And recognizing that is the beginning, that we have both. It blows my mind in certain ways to see how people grasp for an identity, like around masculine or feminine. So like a hyper feminine or a hyper masculine, in as a gay man, I see this in gay culture. You could look into certain scenes like the leather scene. And I'm not saying anything is better than anything else, by the way. Whatever works for somebody is great. However, what I have noticed is this kind of intense caricature of the masculine when you look at the leather scene in the gay world, for example. Mm-hmm. Like this, somebody's dominant and somebody's submissive. And I know that there's also that dynamic that in certain sectors of the rest of the world too, with men and women, not just in the gay world. But this idea of like a hyper masculine, which kind of seems toxic to me.
Right.
This idea that the masculine is only kind of grunt, can't use the stove and only grills outside if it's going to cook or on an open fire, has a certain amount of hair or not hair. And all these ideas, they're just caricatures of the masculine for me. The same thing, if you... Sorry if I'm about to offend anybody, but you go down to someplace like Venice and, get your goddess on. Hey, goddess. It's sweet and it's cute, but the second one of those people often doesn't get the food item that they wanted at Jelena, or somebody says something they don't like, they're as reactive and as nasty as the next person. And frankly, my experience of the goddess is she's firm. Very firm, ferocious if needs to be, but not at all reactive. Very skillful, very intentional, and always appropriate to what must happen. And in the feminine, we've got so many archetypes that we get to look at. One of my core teachers and friends, Sally Kempton, has written an incredible book called Awakening Shakti. That's a very strong beginning at experiencing different qualities of the feminine rather than goddess or not. And each of these qualities, like Durga, for example, when Durga's a warrior goddess, she's got 18 arms, and each of the gods and goddesses in the stories gave her an implement to support what she had to do to destroy the demons of ego. When she's in her shadow form, she's arrogant and nasty and bitchy in a person, male or female. When she's in her exalted form, she knows who she is, she acts when it's appropriate, and rests when it's not needed to be acting. You look at another goddess like one of the crone goddesses, Dumavati, who rides, forgive me if I'm misspeaking, I believe she rides on a thundercloud. There's also a goddess, and it might be Varahi, who wants offerings, but wants the spoilt, the cast aside, the moldy, the decaying. Well, you go, that's kind of gross, until you think through it and go, wait a minute. Oh, for people who feel outcast or feel like a lost cause, that particular aspect of the feminine is saying, I'm here for you too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for all of you. Whatever state or stage you're in life, there's a form of Shakti available to support us that we can connect with, whether that's through the religion we were growing up in, or whether that's by being in nature without any words.
Right. Whew. So much good stuff. I feel like I'm picking up little gems I'm in the process of creating the Lady Balls Nation manifesto.
Mm.
And I love what you were saying. Well, I love everything you're saying, but about Durga, how she is firm but not reactive.
That's right.
That's a very important distinction. And I think it was very, very clearly made with the hypothetical goddess connector at or shouter at Venice. But it's true. I can so see that though, you know. It's like when you see somebody in traffic with like a namaste bumper sticker and then they're like cutting someone off or flipping them off, or it's like,
well, and we're seeing so much of it, especially with the rise of meditation culture now, with the drop-in studios like Unplug and others. We're seeing meditation hit the mainstream and do what the mainstream does, hyper brand it all and look at ways to make money off of it.
Right.
And so there's going to be different expressions of meditation. And I would say to all seekers who are listening, trust your own inner guidance system. Just because somebody's well branded or a studio is well branded doesn't mean it's really delivering strong Shakti that's going to be transformative. Look for the transformation. Look for the real growth. The teachers that are probably the deepest and most cooked are generally the hardest ones to stay around because they're an enemy to the ego. They may not necessarily be mean, but you can't hide your ego around them. You want that. And some people, they don't want that. They just want to take a little bit of the edge off their pain and do what's cool. Well, meditation seems to be cool right now, especially with well-designed studios that look nice. You can go be with the cool kids and meditate. So know what you want. Know what you're really looking for to the best of your ability. And then don't settle for anything less.
Yeah, and
don't mistake branding for reality.
Right. I mean, they could go together.
They can, and I hope they do.
Yeah, there's some gorgeous studios that offer, I feel, both. But no, I get what you're saying, and it's kind of circling back to what you talked about earlier on, like, do you just want to meditate to like, oh, just tell me what to do?
Yeah.
But I wholeheartedly agree. I think, it is going to be uncomfortable, maybe especially at first, when you're facing so much of that, your ego and everything. So,
and it's okay to be somewhat comfortable to begin meditation. That's one of the most important things that I find that people need to hear, because there's so many old stories about we have to suffer to get to the divine or get to God.
Right.
I sit in a chair to meditate, and I encourage people to sit in a chair if they're not already set up to be really comfortable and relaxed sitting on a cushion on the floor. There's no more or less enlightenment on a floor or in a chair.
Right.
What's here is, there's this great line of scripture, you've heard me talk about this in class, from the Vishwasara Tantra. What is here is everywhere. What is not now here is nowhere to be found.
One of my favorites.
Yay.
It is. It's yeah. All right. Okay. So let's transition a little bit. You've actually already talked about this, but you mentioned Sally Kempton and your mom, of course. So how have they influenced you, or is there anyone else you want to include in, like, how have you been influenced by women, or who are some of the other women that have influenced you specifically?
My first major teacher, Swami Chitvalasananda, known publicly as Guru Mai, and that's the ashram or the monastery that I lived in. Big influence.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Sally. So many women that I have the blessing to be around here in Los Angeles. My friend Lou Parker, who's an anchor over at KTLA, is such an inspiration to me. Her courage to move through really intense stuff in her life and keep growing, keep seeking, and keep at it. Certainly you. One of the things I love about you is you just keep showing up no matter what. You just keep plunging ahead. You've got this courage and this fire to keep walking.
Oh,
Truly.
thank
Truly.
you.
I feel like I've been super blessed by so many strong women in my life that have held me and had my back at so many different turns. I'm thinking about a woman, gosh, I cannot seem to remember her last name right now, but when my parents announced to me they were splitting up when I was 7, there was a woman who worked at the school who helped people, who talked to people. I don't know what you'd call her. But she was like a counselor of some sort. And she came to our house and we went for a walk. Her name was Jocelyn something. The way she listened to me set a seed deeply in the soil of my being that is still growing to this day. She didn't discount what I had to say. You know, I said stuff like, well, I think if I could just get my mom and dad on the Love Boat, everything would be okay. They would come back together because that's what happens on the Love Boat. And she'd just hear it. She didn't say, oh, no, that'll never happen. You need to really grow up, to the 7-year-old. She knew how to listen and meet me where I am.
Yeah.
And that's what I found, later in life with Sally Kempton, is she's such a powerful teacher. So powerful. Most of her power, I would say, is concealed very skillfully. And she lets people have their experience until they're ready for something else without making them wrong. That, for me, is a divine feminine expression, whether it's coming out of a man or a woman.
Right. Right. Good point.
And not a doormat at all. I find that the divine feminine will stand up and say, no, you will not defund Planned Parenthood. There are many, 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 many women and men who are benefiting from those services and from that kind of protection and health care. No, you will not do that. No, you will not take away the vote or equal power or equal pay for all beings. We're either all one or not at all.
And that fierceness is feminine. It's not a masculine quality or a woman trying to be manly, right? I mean,
well, I would say it's feminine in the sense of the intensity itself, the energy coming back to the ground is Shakti.
Right.
The energy is Shakti. So you can have that expression be, as we talked about Durga, you can have that expression of that energy be positive and uplifting for everybody involved, or just really cutting. You've heard me tell this story a long time ago. I was with one of my good friends, Victor Rodriguez, very gifted DJ who's been DJing full time for over 30 years in New York and LA. And we were at dinner one night at Larchmont Village, this cute little Italian place, these family owned. They make their fresh pastas and white linens on the tablecloth. And I looked over at Victor. He had this just sweet smile, which he always seemed to have. And I said, Victor, what is it? Like, what do you do? You're always so happy no matter what, even all the crises you've been through. And he looks at me and says, honey, it's really simple. Just don't be cunty. That stuck with me.
All right, then. And there you have it.
There you have it. Just don't be cunty.
It's so simple.
If that word is too intense, just DBC. DBC, baby. Don't be cunty.
Oh, DBC. Okay. Hashtag DBC.
Yeah, that's right.
So didn't you have like a year of, or am I imagining that, or a year of that?
Not intentionally.
Right.
Not,
But you called it that. I thought. I don't know. Maybe that's me making things up in my head, but
I make all sorts of stuff up, but I might forget some of the things I say
oh, okay.
regularly.
So, yeah, that's magical. And what would you
Yeah,
say to
and it's
women like I
funny
could
and simple. It catches people's attention.
yeah.
It's not accidental that I share that story, especially in public classes where people would be shocked. I will curse, I will use taboo words because people are really present when they hear that. And then you can say what's next. So taking a word like cunty
Mhm.
that normally has such a charge, one, taking the charge off of it. It's just a word. It has no meaning other than the meaning we give it.
Yeah.
We take the meaning out of it, it has no meaning. It can't touch us. And this really actually points, frankly, this use of taboo words at the power of mantra. If a word like cunty can create such a reaction in somebody, then words can have power. And specifically, mantric speech, empowered words, can have great power, transformative power, if we let it. And frankly, this also shows that whatever we're thinking about is what we're going to run through the nervous system,
Mm.
even if it's false.
Right.
It will be our experience. As surely as the sun will rise tomorrow morning, what you think is what you get.
So true. So don't think cunty thoughts.
Yeah, and don't make yourself wrong if you find yourself thinking them. Just have a pre-selected replacement.
Yeah. That's good too. Pre-selected I might have to add don't be cunty to the manifesto as well.
I won't be mad.
Okay. Well,
Just
full
give credit
credit.
to Victor.
Oh, yes, to Victor. I'm sorry. Yeah, give Victor the credit. Okay. Well, I know it's going to be hard to top that gem. And I love how you weaved in because I can already hear it. I can already hear people going, well, I'm offended by that word. Like, it's a word.
Yeah, and ask
How are you
yourself,
going to give it?
who or what in there is so easily offended, and what would your life be like if that part of the character was no longer running the show?
Oh,
How much energy would you have getting through the day instead of being reactive to every news post or email or seeming slight or person driving in front of you without turn signals?
mm-hmm.
If we really want to be free, it doesn't mean not acting. It means not being reactive. Words only have the meaning that they've been assigned. We get to choose our inner state. And my inner state is contagious because you have mirror neurons in your brain that can feel what I'm feeling. States are contagious. I think it's a really valuable thing to ask myself. I do regularly. Like, is my current state worth catching? If not, let me upgrade it. It doesn't matter how right my ego is about the use of a word like Kenti. If I'm contracting, one, I'm hurting myself.
Right.
Like, why would I want to do that?
You wouldn't?
No, unless it's a habit.
Yeah.
And that's really coming back to meditation. That's part of why we meditate when it's really working well, is to burn out those old habits of thinking and reacting and become free, totally free. Spontaneously creative to the moment, lighthearted. That's a real key signature of awakening taking root. Authentic lightheartedness and contentment for no reason. For no reason.
I feel you. I do. It's making me think of, well, the word part of, well, which also connects to the lightheartedness. It's like, I think it is actually the very first line in the Tao Te Ching is something to the effect of naming is the origin of all particular things.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whatever we attach or give meaning to, give our headspace to, is what's going to be our reality. So.
And in alchemy, we talk about it like this. Energy is what makes things happen. And intention shapes and directs energy. Well, the way we shape and direct energy is through words. Through words, shaping and directing the flow through an intent. In Tantra, we have this saying, that by which we fall is that by which we rise. Well, what that is language.
Mm-hmm.
In our tradition, it's called matrika Shakti, the power of letters and words. So if I believe the thought, oh my God, that guy should never have said cunty, he's a terrible person, I will have the experience that it's correlate to believing that thought, whether it's true or not. And I'm out of phase. I'm not in flow in that moment with all of my life. I'm temporarily contracted and reacted. I can tell myself a new story that's more uplifting, that's ideally more accurate and true. And then I rise, I expand again. So that by which we fall is that by which we rise, language. And getting a real facility with being vigilant with thinking is a huge source of freedom that many people, including many so-called spiritual people, don't have yet. I've been studying this particular home study course that focuses almost exclusively on this. I'm about to start year 8 of the current iteration of the course. It's written by a friend named D.R. Butler, and it's called Living in the Truth of the Present Moment. And if you just look that up, Google Living in the Truth of the Present Moment, you'll find your way to the blog and a way to sign up. I mean, for less than the cost of a pizza a month, I think it's $18 a month, you get 2 approximately 10-page lessons. You read them every day. One for the first half of the month, one for the second half. And there's something about that daily reading, unlike a book that we love and then goes on a shelf and is forgotten about.
Right, right.
The principles keep getting revisited again and again and again to really get the creative power of thought. And frankly, it is the law of attraction, but many people that are trying to study or talk about it may not have it really fully wired in yet. You know, they read maybe some Abraham Hicks book a couple of times and then it went back on the shelf. But the moment-to-moment practice is where it's at. And burning out that tendency to negatively describe things to ourselves and other people and stay in that reactive cycle day in, day out. And our life will continue to bring us stuff that we would have reacted to, so we get a chance to do it differently.
Aha moment.
Yay.
No, that's so well put. Thank you. Thank you for that. Oh my goodness. Okay. We could keep going with this too forever, but we have to say another word. Well, this isn't, I mean, this word is actually in the title of the podcast and my blog or my website. So who cares? Speaking of balls.
Yeah.
So do you like how I segued that? Like
yes.
This deep spiritual and then speaking of balls.
Were we speaking of balls?
No, we weren't.
Apparently we're going to now.
We're about to. So, okay. We're going to go to the break pretty soon. But before we do, because we always have the rapid fire segment at the end, which we will have today too. But before we do that, I'm taking this one a little out of sequence because I just have a feeling that it might be longer than the normal rapid fire question. And it deserves its own spotlight. Ballsiest thing you have ever done?
Ballsiest thing I ever did. So about, I think 5 or 6 years ago, I was dating a fellow and he got invited to participate in a movie project with James Franco. And it was to be an exploration of sexuality, frankly, and sexuality in film and television. Like, why can't we use it as a narrative device? And I, for some reason, and maybe if reincarnation is for sure a real deal, you know, I was a monk in different traditions and broke my vows. I don't know what it is, but I carried for so many years this kind of heaven-hell feeling in my body around sexuality that I just couldn't seem to shake. And that somehow I was cheating the system looking for joy in sexuality and stuff like that. I knew better cognitively, but it felt like a monkey on my back. So anyway, this opportunity came up and I asked if I could be part of the project, not quite knowing how it would play out. little bit of backstory. There was a movie that came out in 1980 that William Friedkin, famous director, directed called Cruising with Al Pacino as the lead character. And what happens in this movie is there's a murder. And this is pre-AIDS culture, gay culture in the meatpacking district of New York City. So AIDS hasn't hit the mainstream yet. And there's a lot of free love and there's a lot of exploration happening without a lot of limits. A murder happens. And Pacino is a straight young cop who's sent in to go undercover into these gay bars and find out what happened. Well, when Friedkin directed this movie, he went into actual bars, actual leather bars in the meatpacking district of New York and had actual patrons as the background and said, do whatever you would normally do here. Well, pretty much anything would go. Now, when he presented his finished movie to the Motion Picture Association to get a rating, they said, the only way we're going to give you an R rating is if you cut out X, Y, and Z scenes. I think it was about 40 minutes of scenes that later got destroyed by the studio. Still, it was an edgy movie for its time. Anyway, cut to present time. Franco heard about this, and he's just a prolific artist. And he got together with this fellow, another director who's had experience filming real sexuality in a tasteful way, Travis Matthews. And they co-directed this film called Interior Leather Bar. So it's an hour-long project. It's really performance art. It's not like a narrative film because it doesn't wrap up storylines, but it really gets into, okay, why is it that we can blow up entire villages in trailers for PG-13 movies that kids are going to see these trailers or even the movies, but don't show sex. And whatever you do, don't show gay sex because that's just the worst. That's just somehow evil. Meanwhile, everybody who's, alive and healthy and not choosing celibacy is got some version of sexuality happening in their life. It's the most natural thing in the world. And it's an expression of Shakti, of the divine feminine. Truly. Mm-hmm. It can create a life. It can create joy. And it can be recognized, this current or sexual energy, as the same energy through which we create anything and through which galaxies are created and destroyed. So anyway, we do this project, and there's some scenes where I had the chance to say yes or no. Would I be willing to be sexual on camera? Lucky for me, it was my boyfriend at the time, so it wasn't too edgy. But still, I'm actually sexual on camera. I knew it was going to go to the film festival circuit around the world, and I knew it was going to be public. And as scared as I was, I decided this is an opportunity to get free of this, to do this, to be strong about it, to do my actor's preparation, really go for it. But it was super ballsy. I knew that it risked upsetting my parents, family members, alienating friends, all sorts of stuff. And I had to really decide inside myself, who am I going to be about this? Am I doing this for the right reasons? Yes. Great. I'm going to do this. I don't need anybody's permission. And in the immortal words of Dr. Seuss that got me through, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
So
it was a super powerful project that really changed my life.
Yeah, I can imagine. So obviously you did break through that then.
Yeah. And there are times when it still surfaces. Mm-hmm. Somebody stops me. When it was newly out and had been to Sundance and then the Outfest here in Los Angeles and some other festivals, from time to time I'd have people stopping me and saying, I saw you in that movie. And I would feel this pit in my stomach, like this old kind of, uh-oh, is this safe? Am I okay? What are they going to say? And every time they'd be like, it was so great. I learned something about myself, or I'm so glad that people are, breaking out of the boundaries. I'm so glad you did that. So it still surfaces from time to time. And Each time it surfaces, I get to get a little more freedom. Well,
it is not a competition, but I'm just letting you know that does put you in the Ballsy Hall of Fame here. At Lady Balls, because that is seriously up there. But let's let's take a quick break, and then I don't know. I could just keep going forever. Let's just hit on this quick now, because I think it could be so helpful to people. You and I were talking earlier, and I think this fits exactly your decision to do it, to make this film and to put yourself out there. You said go toward what scares you with mindfulness.
Yes. Yes. Amen. If it's not going to hurt myself or another, truly, and that requires probably a little contemplation about some things.
Right.
Why would I want to let something determine my inner experience day to day, especially if it might be false? My example is usually somebody says to me, there's a boogie monster in the closet at the end of the hall. At this stage of my life, I've got no fucks left to give. I'm going to open that closet door and find out. Because if it's in there, I'd rather just know and deal with it than lay in bed freaking out, wondering when it's going to come out, if indeed anything is in there.
Oh my God. Babadook. That's making me think of that.
Yeah.
just look at it. Face it.
Yeah. Just look at it. I remember once doing the breath work that you've experienced and that I teach, the ecstatic breath work, in a hot springs in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Trip. Okay.
And I had already been in it doing the breath work and leading the breath work for several years before I had done it in hot water, in hot springs water. It was a full moon. The sun was setting on these red rocks. We had a private tank, 3 pairs of people in the water. I had already floated somebody who'd been through the breath work. Many of us know that water conducts electricity, so I was pretty cooked already. I laid back to be floated. I got about 10 breaths in, and as some people know, with breath work, when we're releasing old tension and old stuck energies, it can manifest as tension in the physical body, in the muscles, and It can be a little scary, usually around the hands or the mouth. Anyway, every muscle in my body locked up like that.
Ooh.
And you can imagine it shot fear through me really strongly. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to die. And then the next thought right after that was like, fuck it. It's a good day to die. It's a full moon. It's a gorgeous sunset. It's not a lot of years, but I've had a pretty great life and I feel pretty awesome about my life. So if we're going to go, take me now. Just get it over with. I refuse to try and outrun this. Instantly, all my muscles let go, and I was vibrating profoundly.
Ugh. That's intense.
Yes. And I've been told I may or may not be rather intense.
I never really picked up on that side, but I'm starting to get a glimpse.
Yeah.
I think a little bit. Yeah, just a little peek.
Just little peek.
Just a little glimmer here and there, but all right. Well, we are going to take just a really quick break, and then we will be back with rapid fire and some final comments, and let y'all know where you can find Scott. So we are going to be right back. Oh yeah, has this episode kicked ass so far or what? Are you feeling the Shakti? Look, I know Scott's given tons of great suggestions on books, films, websites. Maybe it's a little hard to keep up with. No stress, guys. If you're like driving or at the gym or can't get to what you need to get to write all this down, it's all in the show notes. So just go to ladyballsnation.com, check out the show notes for this episode, and you will have a link to all the goods. All right, we are heading back to the show. All right, we are back with Scott, not very intense, Schwenk. Just kidding. Okay, you ready for rapid fire?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, favorite song to belt out at karaoke?
Oh my God, they're all colluding at once, colliding in my brain. Favorite song?
You can have more.
Usually
than one.
James Taylor,
Okay.
because I can do that voice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a little competitive, so I do like to win, even though I'm taking risks. I like to win. I'm not gonna lie.
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure.
All right, James Taylor, anything in particular?
Country Road.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone. Like that.
Cool. All right. Okay, but no, I'm going to remember that in case we ever find ourselves at karaoke together. Like I might not even, I don't know.
Could happen.
Competition. Could happen. Okay. What is alternate universe Scott doing right now?
Flying without a machine in his body, everywhere and anywhere.
I love that one. That could also be a superpower.
Totally.
Love it. Okay. Movie you're most looking forward to seeing in the near future?
Well, up until last weekend, it was Wonder Woman, and I was
So good.
totally stoked. It was so amazing. Let's see, what am I looking forward to? For sure, the next Star Wars. And what else? That's all I can think of right now. It's not a movie, but Game of Thrones. I'm just on the edge of my seat for the next chunk of Game of Thrones.
Can you believe, like, I feel like I'm the only person on the entire planet who has not seen even one episode.
You know, it's for who it's for. Once you're in it, it's super involved. So who knows? But you've got time. Last year, was it last year before the new season? I was not caught up. I'd only seen maybe 7 episodes of the first season.
Mm-hmm.
Super deep dive in like less than a month. Watched all of it and caught up.
Deep dive, aka binge watching.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a deep dive into the Game of Thrones. Okay, cool.
Well, it's so separately, or not separately, it's so fascinating to me because as a leader whisperer, the king-making business, like how leaders get forged, fascinates me. So it's just a way to look at it. Even though it's fiction, it's still pulling on medieval history.
Right. Well, now I have to check it out. And then I'm probably going to get sucked in too. Have to do a deep dive.
Sorry, not sorry.
Okay. Oddest place that you've ever meditated?
Oddest place?
I don't know. The hot springs was like right up there. So maybe that, you know.
Yeah, that seems too easy though. Because like, seekers go to hot springs to meditate.
That's true.
I'm trying to think like, I mean, I've done it so many places. I would say one of the oddest is in the middle of great physical pain. It's not like a geographic location, but like to drop back in. I remember actually doing some breath work, and I had a little accident in the monastery, and I needed 5 stitches. I ended up kind of having a pretty profound experience where I ended up, as part of that, accidentally cutting above my eyelid on a magazine, on the Hollywood edition of Vanity Fair, actually.
You heard it here, people.
I was still in meditative state, and I just kept practicing it as we were, as we were getting sewn up and like that. I would say that's, for most of us, that would probably feel kind of odd, like to be able to, or to even want to practice meditation in a situation that most people would be in a lot of pain. Yeah,
that's a good one. So you cut your eyelid on the magazine?
Yeah, this one monk showed me this type of breathing, and I don't even really want to talk about it because I don't want people to try it.
Okay.
You need pillows around you if you're going to do it, but it involves moving the physical body towards the floor. You're on your hunches or sitting on your knees, and kind of bending forward as exhaling and breathing in as inhaling. It's so intense, and I didn't realize how open I already was. I literally felt like I had shot out of my body. That was actually my experience. Can't prove it, but it felt like it shot out of my body. And when I came back to, my mouth was shouting this mantra out loud, and I had hit my head. So not a real good plug for breath work necessarily, but definitely a plug for how explosive certain practices are and how important it is to have really good instructions around them.
And cushioning.
And cushions, man. Never have too many cushions in life as far as I'm concerned.
I think so, yeah. It's not training wheels, just safety. Safety first.
That's right, safety first.
Okay, lastly, for rapid fire, your ideal 100th birthday celebration?
Hot air ballooning around the entire world.
Woo!
With lots of good food and a few awesome friends.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, why not?
Why the hell not? You're 100. Who cares?
Exactly. Who cares?
You're going to even have less fucks than you do now.
I know. I'm excited about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, Scott, I could keep going. Seriously, this has been such a pleasure. oh my God, I can't thank you enough.
You're welcome. My pleasure too. I love this.
Yeah. So before we totally wrap up, I guess we'll wrap up with where people can find you. But is there any? I mean, you've already given so much. Seriously, so many great nuggets in this episode. But any parting words that you would like to?
Yeah. Number one, choose to be true to yourself. No matter what, choose to be true to yourself. And maybe even take that on as a mantra. I choose to be true to myself, and find out ever more deeply, who is myself? Who is myself, and what is my work in this world? And do whatever it takes to fully wake up, to fully grow up and heal all the old wounds that pull us out of being awake. And enjoy. Really enjoy. This world is ours to enjoy. We don't own it. It's not ours, but it's here for us. And it will dance and come alive for us when we show up in a good way with love and exchange, really abundant exchange. And try a meditation practice. And if you don't find one that suits you, keep looking. There's as many different ways to meditate as there are moments in a day. So it's about finding a meditation that really suits where you are and can carry you deeper. Us deeper. Don't quit. The path is real. Awakening is real. And it's all worth it in the end.
So good. So good. Okay. And where can people, what is the best way to get in touch with you? Where can people stay in touch with you, or where can they find you? I know you've got your website at scottschwenk.com.
That's one way, and you can email me through that website. Or find me at Unplugged Meditation, currently Thursday nights in Brentwood. And as of October, we're opening the West Hollywood studio in the corner.
I didn't know that. That's exciting. Oh, my goodness.
The lease just got signed, so it's fresh news. Unplug is opening in West Hollywood in October. Yes. All going according to plan. So fantastic. And then Wanderlust, Monday, Wednesdays, Friday currently. Mondays and Fridays for ecstatic breath work. No surgery needed. Total cushioning involved. Lots of cushions, and you get to lay flat. And it's a practice that I've been teaching for 14 years, and still like to teach because it's so quick at emptying out stuck energy in the nervous system and really delivering people to a powerful experience of expanded states of consciousness and ultimately what you truly are. So there's that, and then. If you want to do some one-on-one work, or have me do some culture work, reach me through the website.
Perfect. All right. And all of these links will be in the show notes for this episode at ladyballsradio.com. So if you're driving, don't have a pen, you can just visit us there and you'll be able to link to Scott directly. So, all right. Well, I am stoked about West Hollywood. I have to say that. And I am stoked about this show. Thank you so much. Big love to you, Scott. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you. And huge, deep bow and love to you too.
Oh, yay. Okay, everybody. I hope you are in love with this first Nut Up or Shut Up as much as I am. Thank you, Scott. And we will see you on the next episode. Today's episode has been brought to you by Lady Balls Nation. That's right, girls and boys, we're more than just a podcast, we're a tribe. Want to be a part of it? Head on over to ladyballsnation.com and get your name on the VIP list. You'll get exclusive access to swag, some really cool giveaways, and also an invitation to our private Facebook group. Hope to see you there. Until then, stay fierce.